None of us want to have to deal with emergencies in life. We just as soon avoid them, but avoidance is not preparedness. We're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about how best to be prepared in case an emergency arises. So put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation because it's time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. Well, welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve. I am Steve, and this is the show where we come together around our virtual coffee table each week and join the conversation to chat about interesting topics with amazing guests. If you're joining us for the first time today, welcome. If you've been with us before, welcome back. Yeah, we're going to talk about emergencies. We're going to talk from the perspective of thinking about preparedness, just like we think about having insurance. This has been a tough week for many. A week ago today in Spokane area where I live, we had an outbreak of fires, arson caused in at least some cases that have been extraordinarily destructive to this date. They have assessed that at least 900 structures were damaged or destroyed, over 12 square miles of portions of city and county of Spokane have been consumed by fire, damaged by fire. And it has, fortunately, thank God, no indications that anyone was killed or even injured as a result of these fires, either because of the fires themselves or as a result of trying to evacuate. We ourselves, I know several people have asked this. I've been posting some of this on Facebook, but Carol and I have been safe throughout this. Did not have to evacuate. We had family and we've had friends who have been directly affected by this and are still not back in their homes in many cases, and may not be for quite a while, even though their homes did survive the fires. And this fire season remains very active. Today is another day where they're saying keep a careful watch in our area. And Spokane in our area is not the only place in this country that has been affected recently by various forms of disaster. Fires in a lot of places on the west, particularly, and in some places in the east. Tornadoes, floods, a variety of things, some naturally caused, some man-made, but things that cause people to suddenly have to consider, what do I need to do to survive? Whether it's getting quickly out of their home or having to shelter in place somewhere and get by for perhaps a number of days. Not trying to make this overly dramatic, it's just a reality. By the way, I will mention, broadcasting today, not from Spokane. Carol and I happen to be in beautiful Gaston, Oregon. If you're not familiar, it is west of the Portland area, beautiful little town. And I'm at the home of my brother, Scott, and his lovely wife, Kathy. And we are not here because we had to leave due to the fires or the smoke. We're here because we're celebrating a birthday. I'll be mentioning a little bit more about in a few minutes. But yes, do say hello in the chat if you're with us. I do see that Rick is here. Carla is here. Carla's here. No, Carla's not here. Carla, I think, may be on the road because she is coming to celebrate birthdays as well. Shalan is here. Jerry is here. Good morning to all of you, and I hope you are doing well. I hope that wherever you are and whatever you're doing, that you are also safe and doing well. We're going to talk about several things. Hello, Dustin. I don't know what language that was in, but I say hello to you. We're going to get to our sweet and savory because I want to get to our conversation today. And the conversation is significant. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a couple minutes, but I want to talk about our sweet and savory. And this is a story I love. We always like to find feel-good stories and share them, and good news, especially in the midst of times when there has been so much chaos, as Shalane mentioned, so many things. Oh, Carla is watching. All right. Hello, Carla. This took place in Virginia. We all know that Santa Claus is famous for giving gifts, but this may be an ultimate. There's one Virginia man who spends every Christmas as the community's beloved Santa Claus in a variety of locations and venues, may have given the greatest gift of all. He lost 40 pounds to qualify to do this, and then anonymously donated one of his kidneys to someone he had never even met. Recovering in the hospital wearing his Santa hat, he simply said he hoped his gift would give someone else a chance at a healthier, fuller life. And again, his name is not shared because he did this anonymously. It turns out, obviously, the spirit of Christmas doesn't just have to take place in December. It's something that can show up any day of the year, and it's something that reminds us that we can all do things to make a difference. So well done, sir. Well done, Santa. And just another example of what an amazing, amazing person Santa Claus is. We do have some birthdays to celebrate this week, and I want to get to them. First one is happening just in a couple of days, and it's the reason we are in Gaston, Oregon this weekend. My brother, Scott Glavin, is celebrating a birthday on Monday, but he's actually throwing himself a massive birthday party this evening here in Gaston. So we came to town to be part of that. Why? Because he's turning 60. And we want to celebrate that milestone with Scott. So happy birthday, Scott. You'll be hearing that from me, obviously, multiple times today, tonight, over the next few days. And then on the 11th, on Tuesday, Keith Foster, you may remember Keith. He is a long distance ultra marathon and distance runner who, along with his running partner, Joel Herman, have been on the show actually months ago. They shared on a daily basis as they were doing a multi-day, several 100-mile run. But Keith survived all of that, to where he's celebrating another birthday this coming Tuesday. So happy birthday to Keith. And then Analia Young, who's another dear friend and friend of this show, has been on here before, and an amazing individual, is celebrating a birthday on the 12th of August. And so we want to wish Analia a happy birthday as well. Do you have a special day this week? You can let us know that in the chat so we make sure that we can celebrate it with you. You have a special day coming up, perhaps later in the month of August, later this year, whenever it might be. You can send us an email to cbwsteve@comcast.net so we get it on the calendar and make sure that when the week comes of your celebration, it doesn't have to be a birthday. It can be an anniversary. It can be whatever is a special day for you and you would like us to celebrate with you. Get it to us and we will make sure we do that. Let's see. I want to make sure we're showing and sharing our comments. Look, here comes the birthday boy. We just mentioned you.
I know you said names. You said my name.
I did say your name. So
you
now
talked about me.
I talked about you. So now we're seeing your face, and I'm just going to keep seeing it. I love your face.
I'm just going to stand here.
Just going to stand here. I love that. You can do that. That's what live broadcast is about. Last time that happened, we were in Lincoln City.
We were in Lincoln City,
and your face showed up. So
okay, have fun.
Thank you. You too. Mm-hmm. Thanks for stopping by. Anytime. There's just living proof that we are indeed here. Listen, I want to talk just for a moment about the purpose of this topic today, and the irony is not lost on me. This conversation with Chandra Fox, who I'm going to tell you about in just a moment, was recorded one day before the outbreak of these terrible fires in Spokane. We recorded this on the Friday, the day before. And it's interesting because you could say that, well, this is a little bit, closing the barn door after the horses have gotten out type of thing, that too bad we didn't share this episode before the fires. It is never not a good time to talk about this, to talk about being prepared for emergencies. Why? Because just because something happened in one area this last week doesn't mean it can't happen again to the same people. And it certainly does not mean that it can't happen to any one of us at any time. This conversation was actually prompted because several weeks ago, there was another fire that was not far from our neighborhood in Spokane, and we did have to evacuate. And it reminded both Carol and me that even though we've had items prepared in the past, we weren't really ready to just get right out the door. We had some things that we had to pull together at the last minute. We had some things that once we went back after that evacuation, got back home and started reviewing, realized had some things that if we thought about it in advance, we would have had ready and taken with us, and we didn't have them with us. And even some of the things we did have, some emergency kits and stuff, had outdated items. And so it put us in a place of reevaluating and taking another look at those things and updating some things. And it prompted me to reach out to our area, Spokane County's Emergency Management Services, to talk to them and ask if they would be willing to have a conversation with me for coffee breaks and just share some helpful, useful information about emergency preparedness for everybody. So let me just tell you just a little bit about our guest today and why I think it's vital that you pay attention to this. Chandra Fox is a certified emergency manager and joined Spokane County Department of Emergency Management in April of 2017. She's had more than 20 years of emergency management experience, including being a contract instructor with the Emergency Management Institute and a Washington State certified NIMS ICS instructor. Her background includes 15 years as coordinator for the Emergency Services Coordination Agency, serving a population of 190,000 people in 10 cities. During that time, her duties included all aspects of emergency management programming. In 2014, Chandra deployed to the State Route 530 mudslide incident where, as part of the debris task force, she was responsible for the creation of the Personal Belongings Reunification Program, recovering and caring for over 2,000 items for survivors as well as victims' families. Chandra is active in both the Washington State Emergency Management Association and the International Association of Emergency Managers, and has served as the latter organization's Region 10 president. She holds a BA from the University of Puget Sound and received her Certified Emergency Manager credential in 2007. So someone who is extraordinarily well qualified to talk about emergency preparedness. And listen, please listen. Please pay attention to this. I learned things even though I felt like we were pretty ready. I learned things from this conversation, no matter where you are, no matter what your circumstance. Pay attention to this. Here's the conversation with Chandra Fox. Chandra Fox, welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Well, happy to be here. Thanks very much for the invitation.
You know, it's we discussed the fact that this in many parts of the country right now has been a particularly heavy time for a variety of disaster types of situations, including wildfires, et cetera. And I think it's relevant to be talking about some of these things. You know, many people, I think, including myself at one time, assumed that preparedness for any kind of an emergency requires a lot of monetary investment or a lot of very specialized equipment. I wonder if you can talk just a little bit as we start out about what are some of the most important first steps that households can and should take?
So I think preparedness really has to kind of match, it has to be relevant to where you live, right? So your preparedness has to match up with the threats and hazards that you face. And, you know, I've been doing this a long time. I'm getting close to 30 years in the profession of emergency management, and our understanding of preparedness and how we approach and teach preparedness has actually changed a little bit throughout the years. And what we're really focused on is helping people understand that when they think about preparedness, what they're really doing is they're building resilience into, you know, their own family structure, their own life structure. So folks need to look at the things that are important and meaningful to them as they start approaching preparedness. So, you know, the first step obviously is to understand what are the hazards that you're facing, because how we prepare varies hazard to hazard. Yes, there are some things that everybody should be doing, you know, kind of across the board, but there are other things that are more specific to specific hazards. So understanding that depending on what you're preparing for, if you're worried about power outages or losing, you know, your utilities, things like that, then you want to be thinking about, how do I store food? How do I prepare food? And how do I ensure, you know, I can feed myself and my household for a duration? We used to say 3 days. We now tell folks to plan for at least a week, you know, depending on where you live and what the resources are in your area, probably longer than that. But it's also things like making sure that you have adequate supply of your important medications. It's making sure you have communication capability, whether that is a old time transistor radio with batteries, or whether it is satellite, making sure you have some type of redundant communication capability, making sure that you have batteries and you have power, and then making sure that, and this has always struck me as kind of funny, but when we talk about building a disaster kit, you know, your food, your first aid supplies, all of those types of things, making sure that you have something nice in there for yourself as well. You know, if you're a chocolate person, make sure you've got a couple of chocolate bars, things like that, because a little bit of enjoyment, positive reinforcement can go a long way when you're in a challenging situation.
Let's talk for a minute about kind of continuing on with that concept, and I'll refer to it as sheltering in place, the idea that you may have to stay within your home for a period of time, power outage, maybe it's some other situation that requires that. And you talked about having the proper food stores, that type of thing. I also think about maintaining power for certain things. A lot of people will take the time to invest in generators or some type of battery backup type of a system. But it's also important to just make sure you got, as you mentioned, things that don't necessarily have to rely. I'm thinking about stuff that might be in the refrigerator or freezer, and there's a risk of spoilage. But having food items that aren't based on having to preserve them, having long-term canned goods, that type of thing. Again, are we talking about having sort of a backup of 7 days, or should people consider having something that's a little more substantive in terms of having that kind of food storage?
Well, it really depends on where they're living. Where the individuals are living, what their resources are in terms of the local economy and things like that. One of the things that's challenging when we talk about preparedness is the unfortunate fact is, we're in a challenging economic situation right now. And when folks are having to make decisions about putting gas in the car versus paying their rent, paying their utility bill, buying groceries, it's really difficult for folks to have 7 or 10 days of food just on the shelf when they're making tough economic choices. And so we understand that, and that's why it's important for people to really understand their own community and understand where the resources exist within their community. Are there, nonprofit organizations, faith communities, things like that, which may be kind of a non-traditional place for folks to access resources. And that's why it's so important for people to understand what their local community is. But it's also making sure that as you're thinking about how you're going to, feed yourself, feed your household, making sure that if you are out of power, making sure that you have the ability to heat food, to cook food, whether that's a propane camp stove, or people forget about their barbecue grills.
Right.
You can warm up a can of soup on your barbecue grill the same as you can cook a steak. So making sure that you've got adequate propane for your grill, or charcoal briquettes, or whatever type of grill you use. Making sure that you have the resources that you need to support the choices that you're making. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And those are important considerations. You were talking about having things like a transistor radio or other forms of communication. One of the key things that often comes up is that we're very reliant on our cell phones in this day and age, or on online chat capabilities. And in certain situations, you may be cut off from family. I don't know if there's a simple answer for that, but if some of those services were not available for a period of time, are there any good brainstorming ideas between family members in different areas that should be taken into consideration to be able to keep in touch? Or is that just something you have to work around in the event of a situation that may have cut off some of those communication channels?
So having a family communications plan is absolutely a terrific idea. And one of the things that we've seen is when disasters happen, whether it's a natural disaster or something else, one of the first things that typically happens is the cellular networks become overloaded, because so many people are trying to make calls, and the system, it just doesn't have the bandwidth to support that many users. So what we found is landlines may continue to work, in times when cellular networks are down. And I know there are very, very few people who maintain an actual landline at this point in time, but those folks who do, it can be truly a lifeline for them.
Yeah.
But my point is that when we're talking about family communication plans, it can be helpful to have, if you have different family members in different areas of the country and different areas of your state, you can designate one person as kind of the central operator, and family members, if they can reach that one person, they can keep track of where everybody is, and they can share that information out with the rest of the family.
Yeah. I may not know if this is true, but I've heard that sometimes when the cell networks are getting overloaded, that text messages may still get through when making an actual voice call is overloading the system.
Yes.
Is that so?
Yes.
That's something to at least keep in mind that may allow you to still get a message out to family.
Yeah. If you're unable to make the voice call, you may be able to send text messages. Yes.
So let's talk for a minute. Our family was in a position a few weeks ago where a wildfire near us did require us to evacuate. And as sometimes is the case, we didn't get a lot of notice. It wasn't like we got an initial warning, say, hey, just keep an eye on this. It went pretty quickly from a be prepared to leave to get out now. And we had a couple of our grandkids with us at the time. We actually, I think, I pat us on the back because I think we handled it with a great degree of calmness and attention to getting ready and moving in a good way. One of the things that I will mention, because you talked about if you have to shelter in place or that type of thing, having some things that you actually enjoy. One of the things that our grandsons did as we were loading up the car was they threw some of their stuffed animals that they sleep with in the back. Yeah. And first we kind of chuckled at that, but the reality was that was part of what kept them calm.
Yep.
and helped over the couple of nights that we had to be away from the house. And I think that's an important consideration. You also mentioned, we talked about, and we actually have some things in place. We've been looking since that evacuation to update some things, but we've had a sort of a go bag, an emergency, if we have to get out quick bag. That after that emergency, we went through and realized some of the emergency food items in there were outdated. We needed to make some replacements with that, but also just going through and reminding yourself what's in those cases and what else you might need. And I'm thinking particularly about important documents, keepsakes, and other things. And the thought occurred to us, just even having some of those key things in a central location as much as possible, and also having a checklist. Can you just kind of share some thoughts on all of that?
So, congratulations on managing an evacuation with young children in a timely and safe manner, because I know that can be a challenge. But when we're talking about things you should have in your go bag, you mentioned important documents, alternate forms of ID. You may, if you have several vehicles that you're unable to take, making sure you have your vehicle titles, things like that. Cash, having at least some amount of cash money is always helpful as well. But making sure that you have those things in a location where you can get to them quickly, where it doesn't take a lot of thought to pull things together, because as you mentioned, you did not have a tremendous amount of notice before you were informed that you needed to evacuate.
Right. And
specific to our location, here in Spokane County, that is something that we see more and more of because of the fuels condition that we have, because of the fire danger that we're exposed to here. It is becoming more and more common for when fires to start, we just immediately go to that level 3 evacuation, leave now, because the fire danger, the fire behavior itself becomes so rapid with rapid growth, kind of extreme behavior, that we don't have really the luxury of giving folks that long lead in, that heads up. So what we're trying to lean into is when we have what we call critical fire weather, where we have higher temperatures, very low humidity, and wind, and relatively high winds. We try to message out to our folks here in Spokane County that they need to be prepared, and kind of take just the understanding that this is critical fire weather, and so we're going to treat it as that level 1 evacuation notice. You ought to be getting ready. Yeah. Just because we're in a dangerous situation and something may occur, and you won't have that long lead in, and so we want folks to be ready as quickly as possible. And evacuations, the couple of points about evacuations just in general, and this is applicable regardless of where you live. If you are in a situation where your public safety agencies are telling you need to be ready to evacuate, pay attention to them. There's not a public agency, public safety agency in the country who makes this stuff up. Nobody does it just to do it. There's always reasoned thought behind any type of evacuation notice. And so when your public safety agency gives you that notice, please pay attention to it. There's a reason that they are telling you that. And the other thing that I would say is, if you are concerned about the situation, if you personally do not feel safe in whatever situation you're in, go ahead and evacuate. You don't have to wait for the deputy to come knock on your door and say, hey, we need you to leave now. Right. If you're not feeling safe, go ahead and leave. The other point I would like to make is in your comments about your experience having your grandchildren with you, that took a little bit more time, didn't it? It took more time to manage the children, get their things together than it would have if it had just been you and your wife, right? Right. So understanding who's in your household, who needs more time to be ready to evacuate and get in the car and away, whether that is your grandchildren, whether it is your elderly parent, whether it is your cat or your dog. Yeah. If you need more time, make sure you are taking that time that's allotted to you. And that's why pre-planning and preparedness is so important, because if you have the cat carrier with the cat food right by the door, and all you need to do is grab your kitty and put the kitty in the carrier and out the door you go, that's much quicker and much more efficient than, trying to remember, oh, where did I put the cat carrier? And oh my God, where's the cat? So right. That's why preparedness is so important to all of this conversation.
A couple of additional thoughts that come to mind with that, Chandra. One is during that evacuation that we were in a few weeks ago, we also had family members living nearby who were faced close enough that they were faced with the same situation, and a member of the household with a disability that was not going to be able to be immediately transported through just their own vehicle. And the family member called 911 to find out what the options were, and we're told you're not at a level 3 yet, but we're putting you on the list, and if you're getting close to that, we will work with you to make arrangements for transportation. And they sent an ambulance, and they were able to provide the family member with a location at one of the hospitals here in the area that had that kind of sheltering set up for people in an evacuation who needed the additional care. And it was just good to know that, again, now they know for the future that they can how to make those kinds of arrangements, not be caught in a situation where they're already at a level 3, you got to go now and trying to set that up. So I thought that was just important to include. And with that, the other thought that comes to mind kind of with that idea is having communication with neighbors within your community to kind of know who is who and who may need some additional assistance getting out. Maybe it's an elderly neighbor or someone with a disability. Do you think that, maybe speak a little bit about the idea of the importance of communities working together?
That's a very important point, and it's something that we like to encourage. It's something that we like to see. You know, whether it's your cul-de-sac or whether it's your faith community or whatever it is, having someone who understands who the vulnerable people are in your community, whether it is, you know, an elderly person, or maybe you have a family down the street who have latchkey kids. You know, that's a very common situation where we have young people, youngsters who are home alone in the afternoon until mom and dad are able to get home from work, and understanding who those vulnerable folks are, and finding a way to, you know, prepare their families and assist those families that perhaps need that extra help. You know, that's something that's very, very important. And if people can do that on a community level, neighbor to neighbor, that helps us tremendously. When we know that folks are working together to support their neighbors and their extended families, that's hugely helpful to the public safety agencies.
What do you see as some of the most common misconceptions or mistakes that people tend to make, whether it's before in preparing, during an emergency situation, or even in the aftermath?
Probably the most common, it's two things really. It's not happened before, so it's not going to happen. If it happens, it won't be that bad. And it's just not that big of a deal. And you know, the fire that you were involved in was something along those lines, because that particular neighborhood, while having been at risk for many, many years, had never really had this type of incident occur. And so we had folks who were just like, oh, you know, it'll be fine. Well, it's not fine. And one of the challenges that we have is helping people across the entirety of our county understand that they're all at risk. And so for people to take the position that they don't have to prepare because it's not going to happen to them, or they don't have to prepare because the government will help them. That's one that frustrates me as a representative of the government. And we just don't have the capacity. There's no government in anywhere in the United States or the world really that has the capacity to care for every single individual on an individual basis. It's just not possible. And so we do really need folks to take some measure of personal responsibility. That's what preparedness is.
Yeah.
You are taking responsibility for your outcome.
Yeah.
The more you prepare and the better you prepare for whatever the incident is, whether it's a wildfire or a flood or a tornado, whatever it is, the better you prepare, the more positive your outcome will be post-incident.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the most frustrating thing for me is where people think that they don't have to do it or it's not going to matter. So that's probably my number one concern.
Are there some, both within our local area, Spokane County, where I live, where you work, and even beyond that, are there some basic resources, apps, places that people can go online to get information, maybe download checklists, find out what they can have on their phone to be keeping track of potential emergencies before and during a situation?
So in terms of preparedness information, checklists, things like that, there's a lot of different resources. Probably the best one is ready.gov. So the word ready.gov, and that will take you to FEMA's site. And FEMA has all sorts of resources and materials, information. If you go to the FEMA training, there's also some independent study online courses people can take to learn about disasters and disaster response. I always encourage folks to do that if you've got a particular interest in that. Your local emergency management office should have if they don't maintain a robust website, they should have, still have print materials and things available to you. So be sure you're checking, with your public safety agencies. If you live in a fire district, make sure you've got a good relationship with your fire district. So there's a lot of different avenues to get information just about general preparedness. But if we're talking about alert and warning and how you actually receive incident information, it is absolutely vital that individuals register with their home agency wherever they live. The vast majority of jurisdictions across the country have some type of alert and warning platform for their constituencies now. It's very uncommon for jurisdictions to not have alert and warning. So the vast majority do. So wherever you live, making sure that you are registered into your jurisdiction's alerting system. We do have technology that that is capable of pushing information and alerts out to the general public. Those are called WEAs, wireless emergency alerts, and that is the IPAWS system, integrated public alert and warning system, which is managed at the federal level through FEMA. And while that's helpful, registering into your local system gives you the security of knowing that you're not going to miss an alert. Because sometimes how the alert is sent through the WEA, the IPAWS system, it may not reach you because you may not be in the geo-targeted area. And so if you're registered into the system, that guarantees you that you will receive whatever messages is coming out. We have a lot of folks here in Washington State, kind of the western states, California, Oregon, Washington. I think it's gone into Idaho now. But the Watch Duty app that came out of, it was developed by a group of folks in California in response to the wildfires they had there. Hugely, hugely helpful. But again, it doesn't guarantee you're going to get the information you need. And right now, Watch Duty is only focused on wildland fire. So if we have another type of incident, whether that is, a train derailment or a hazardous materials release or, severe winter storm, Watch Duty is not going to have that information. Your local alerting authority is going to have that information.
Good. If viewers remember only one message from our conversation today, what is the single most important action you would recommend, encourage them to take in the next, whether it's the next 24 hours, within the next week, just in the short term? What should they be thinking about doing now?
So understanding that this is a wider audience than just Spokane County, I'm going to give you two answers.
Great.
If you are listening to this and you live in Spokane County, Washington, register for Alert Spokane.
Yeah.
That's my main takeaway for folks within Spokane County. We are facing some seriously dangerous fire conditions coming up this weekend into the rest of the summer. Yeah. Folks need to be careful. Folks need to be registered and able to receive the information. For folks living elsewhere, probably, I would say the first thing that you need to do is understand your risk. So what are the hazards that you are exposed to wherever it is that you're living? If you're in the Midwest, you may be more concerned, about tornadoes than you are anything else. Okay, so what does my risk for tornadoes look like, and how do I prepare for that? So understanding your risks and then making the decision to do something and take that first step into building preparedness into your house. Make it, it's kind of a lifestyle. But you're really focused on is you're building resilience for yourself and your loved ones, and that's really how you need to look at it. Is you're making decisions and you're taking action to help protect what you care about.
Yeah. Well, Chandra Fox, thank you so much for taking the time to join us to share this important, vital, really lifestyle information. Thank you as well to you, your team, all of the responders, both here locally in the Spokane County area, but throughout the nation, who work so diligently to help keep us all safe and prepared for any emergency.
Well, you're very welcome, and thanks again for the invitation.
No matter what your circumstance, no matter what you may already have been through or could potentially go through, the hazards that face you, timely information, and I would go so far as to say timeless information. This kind of information does not have a limited shelf life. And I hope we all found things within the conversation with Chandra Fox to apply in our own situation. I know Carol and I, listen, even heading out of town this weekend, recognizing that once again, Spokane County is under a red flag fire watch. This is another weekend when they were concerned about wind, dry conditions, fires that have already continued to burn that could spread as a result of this. We brought our go kits with us. We brought the documents, we brought the go bag, we loaded up some keepsake items, and they came with us on this little weekend trip because we never know. And it's not paranoia. It's not, I don't think it's a case of trying to overcompensate for anything. Look, most of you out there, if not everyone, depending on your living situation, carry some kind of homeowner's insurance in the event of a loss. You hope you're never going to have to use it, but you don't want to not have it. There's a peace of mind in knowing that you have it. And when it comes to things like emergency preparedness for us, when we did have to evacuate due to a wildfire a few weeks ago, for the people in our community who we know and so many others, by the way, they're saying 65,000 people or more just in the Spokane area evacuated their homes, most of them still out of their homes, whether they lost property or simply in areas that are still too dangerous to return to. 65,000 people. And so, when you're talking about something like this, it's not simply a matter of, yes, insurance is fantastic and it's important because in the event of a loss, you have the ability to recover and rebuild and try to move forward with your life in that way. In the event of some of these emergencies, if you are not prepared to shelter in place in the best way possible or get out with what you need in the best way possible, it's not as simple as just how quickly am I going to be able to recover. It may actually be your life, the lives of your loved ones who really are at risk here. So yeah, extremely important. It's not in any way to try to be sensationalistic with any of this. It's important. And I hope that you got that from the conversation. I'd be curious to know in the chat if there were things that you particularly found to be helpful or useful. If you would be willing to even share those, that would be great. We would love to know what, for you, were the most useful and important things that you heard from Chandra? What parts of the conversation resonated with you the most? Several of you already mentioned. I know Carla and Rick shared several things that within their community, within their household, they already have available, and some of the things that they're already aware of. If you have resources, if you have ideas, if you have things that you'd want to share, you can put them in the chat. You can also send those to us at our email address, cbwsteve@comcast.net. We'd be more than happy to create a little resource file. And I'm sharing a couple of things here as we wrap up today. But once again, a huge thank you to Chandra Fox. You know, it was already a busy season when we set this recording time, and we worked very carefully around Chandra and her team to set this time to be able to record that conversation. And as we mentioned several times here, and she mentioned that they were also watching very critically on the day that we recorded this. And after we finished recording, as she and I were talking, she indicated they were very concerned about the weekend coming up, one of the highest levels of concern they'd had in quite a while. And again, the sad irony is that it played out in such a way that the fires that broke out the following day and have continued to affect the community are considered the most extreme and severe in the history of the state of Washington. And they're not finished yet. They're still working on those. They made great progress in containing and subduing those fires. They're still hotspots, and they're not 100% contained. So you can see the how critical it is to know and to be aware, and how important it is to have resources such as Chandra Fox and her team in our area. And so once again, very grateful to them, to all of the responders, to all the medical personnel, to all the firefighting personnel, law enforcement, everyone. National Guard has come in to help. We have currently, I'll mention this, as of the latest update, there are resources from 20 states in the United States currently in the Spokane area and some of the other areas in Washington helping with wildfires just in our area. And so again, just my heart is full in knowing just how much our community has responded. And we're going to share a few things here in just a moment. I want to share some things that are coming up, first of all, in the next few weeks, because we have a lot happening on Coffee Breaks with Steve. Next week, do you remember Casey Schisler, the bard? She was here and talked about Norse mythology and playing the Greek lyre and her musical background. Well, she's just returned, literally just returned this last week from a month-long trip to Finland, where she was studying the culture and the stories and the mythology and the music of that country. And she's going to be here next week to share some of the experiences and some of the things that she learned. And it's just another fascinating conversation with the bard. So you'll want to be here for that. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to have a lady by the name of Muffy Nye, who is going to be here. She is a dance instructor. She teaches tango and other jazz and other forms of dancing. And not just, okay, so you dance, but why can dance be such a great way, both from a physical and as well as a mental and emotional standpoint, be great exercise and just great for us in terms of building our confidence, building our own sense of self. And so Muffy's going to come and talk to us about that. Another fun conversation. And then 3 weeks out on August 29th, we're going to have a cool gentleman by the name of Rafael Hernandez, who is a veteran, combat veteran from Afghanistan, also a career soldier who just retired from the Army last year. And he's also not only a businessman and entrepreneur, but he's an author who's written 2 books. One of them just came out. And he's going to be talking about his books, and he's going to be talking about his journey in the military and beyond that. And you'll want to be here to hear from him. All right, what are the topics you'd like to discuss? Who are the guests you'd like to see? Would you email us at cbwsteve@comcast.net? Share your ideas, and we can have a conversation about it. If you know people, some of our great guests that have been on here, so many of them have come from you and come from others who have said, I know somebody, or here's somebody that I can think of. And particularly if you do know somebody, you're able to make an introduction. It means a lot. And by the way, we always reward those with a little special gift that we have if we end up putting that topic, getting that gift on there. Speaking of which, most of you know, I think, that we have a YouTube channel. We are currently in the process of doing some major revamping to our YouTube channel to make it more accessible, to make it more visible, to make it more meaningful to the people who tune in. And just imagine how many people could benefit from learning what we just learned today from Chandra Fox. This is information everybody needs. If you're not yet a subscriber to our YouTube channel, would you subscribe, please? You can easily find it. You see where it is out there, but you can go to YouTube and just put in Coffee Breaks with Steve in the search, and it'll come up and you can subscribe. If you're already a subscriber, would you do yourself, do the people in your life a favor and share it with them? I'm not looking to get famous through this, but people need to hear from Chandra Fox, and we'll benefit from hearing from so many of our guests. Please share it. I'm also going to tell you this. Today, we extended this a little bit because of the message and some of the people who might want to tune in live. This is the final week that we're going to be live streaming to the YouTube channel. And let me explain that a little bit. We'll be talking about it a little bit more in the weeks ahead so people understand. Because of the revamp we are doing, we want to make the YouTube channel much more focused on specifically on topics and on guests. And we want to be able to edit and refine it so that some of the things that we talk about up front that we enjoy talking about are sweet and savory, and some of the things we talk about at the end, what's coming up next, may or may not have as much of a relevance and a shelf life. We want the focus of the YouTube channel to specifically be on those topics and those guests. So I'm working right now with a media director, Lisa Shepard, who is going to be in the process of updating and refining that. And to make it more realistic to do that, the live stream will continue on Facebook, which is where the majority of people tune in to be part of this live chat. And then we will get the episodes in their edited and targeted format up on YouTube and be getting that word out more effectively through there. I hope that makes sense. I hope you understand. We know that there are some people who may want to tune in live who aren't on Facebook, and we get that. And our hope is that this will not be any kind of a detriment. We believe it's actually going to be more effective as time goes by. So that's the direction that we're going with that. All right, listen, we started this month with another one of our nonprofits that we were sharing about, CYT Christian Youth Theater. And we're going to come back to CYT in September. We're going to pick that up where we left off and do more to promote them. But given the events of this last week, given some of the things that are happening, we thought it would make more sense, be more effective to talk a little bit about resources and organizations that are there to provide help in the event of emergencies. That can be places that you may want to donate to in some cases, or if you have needs, where you can go to get the resources and the help that you need. One of them is an organization called Direct Relief. And they have a website you can go to. You see it there at the bottom. They handle relief and aid and assistance and resources for people and areas that have been affected by wildfire specifically. And right now they're doing work in Washington State as well as a variety of other areas. That's one of the agencies you can look at for relief. They are a nonprofit organization as well. And if you want to donate to them to assist them in their efforts, you can go to their website and find out. Innovia Foundation is specific to our region of the country. They are the community foundation for Eastern Washington and Northern Idaho, the area where I live. And they have been key as a resource and a conduit for providing assistance and aid in the wake of these wildfires. They've set up funds, a fund specifically for this. They, on a regular basis, they provide donor advised and donor directed funding through the foundation. And right now they are inviting anyone who wants to give to this specific fund to do so. And all of this aid will go to assist those who have been impacted by the wildfires in the Spokane area. Another great organization. You see their website down there at the bottom. We're going to stay strong in Spokane, as well as so many areas that have been impacted by issues, by disasters, by emergencies over the course of these last few months. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be sharing more information about organizations near you, in some cases on a national basis, that may be organizations you would want to look for and look toward. We also put the website in there for ready.gov, and that's the organization run by the government organization and site run by FEMA that has it. You talk about checklists and resources and ideas about how to be ready for any emergency. They are out there. Plus, you can take little mini courses online. So we invite and encourage you to look at that site as well. It sounds like, well, we're really focusing on this. Yeah, we are. My family and I have been very directly touched by some of the issues that are going on. And no matter where you live, there are things in your area, storms, flooding, fires, earthquakes, whatever it might be, things that could affect you and the people that you love. Please take this seriously. Please do the things that you need to be safe. And please remember to find a way to make a difference in your world this week. We can all do that in so many different ways. God bless you. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Coffee Breaks with Steve.